think it is too.
Well, is this a question?
This is a question. I understood you to say that getting the doors open in the science community about any of these questions are difficult.
Right.
And I know that to be true. Is it even more difficult to open the doors in the science community about Kundalini?
Not really. The question is, he's understanding that it's difficult to get the doors open in the scientific community. Is it more difficult to get them open in discussing Kundalini? In my experience, if they are interested at all, Kundalini gives them something to actually focus on. If they don't have a problem, if they don't have like something they can actually grab onto, and they don't have any evidence that there's been a change of energy state, then they don't have anything that they can work with. So in my humble opinion, I think everybody should be tested to see where their energy is at, what their CDP is doing, and ask them, are you interested in higher consciousness? Are you interested in more awareness, an expanded awareness? So, go ahead.
Follow-up question. Are you aware of any scientific explorations on the university level about the mechanism of Kundalini? Is anybody studying this anyplace?
Not that I know of.
So why is that?
It's really hard to study Kundalini if you haven't had the experience, because now it's just all hearsay. It's somebody else, which is part of the reason I decided to really devote my life to the study of consciousness. This was not what I was going to do with my life. But, from my point of view at this point, the biggest stumbling block for the old reductionist scientists is that they only want objective stuff. And Kundalini is by nature very, very subjective. So I have tried to pioneer a method, and I think probably, these guys here, IONS, they're all trying to pioneer different methods by which the subjective can be included and studied. And, when you study it long enough, I'll just say this at this point. For instance, I could go anywhere in any universe and communicate because I understand the language of energy. I could look at any setting, any world, and I do visit other worlds and have done a tremendous amount of research with other dimensions because I understand the language of energy. There's a language that is utilized to create a world. And the form that unfolds from that, the use of that language is, it says it all. If I tell people, bring me your dreams, I'll tell you what other worlds you're creating as well as this one.
Okay, we have a microphone now, so when you're...
Oh, wonderful. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. What I was wondering is what kind of practical application does the discovery of this energy have for, say, for someone who has not had some kind of awakening like you have had? Are there ways this energy can be used for healing or for helping other people to awaken? Or
yes, big yes. Are there ways for people to awaken? Let me give you guys a website and a 2-hour video to watch, if you haven't already seen it. Okay, go to Google and type in Mehran, M-E-H-R-A-N, middle name Tavakoli, T-A-V-A-K-O-L-I, last name Keshe, K-E-S-H-E.
Could you spell that through one more time?
Yeah, got your paper now? Mehran, M-E-H-R-A-N, Tavakoli, T-A-V-A-K-O-L-I, Keshe, K-E-S-H-E. And Mehran Keshe is an amazing scientist. If you don't do anything else this year, I would highly recommend that you listen to an interview that he did last year. I think I've seen it maybe 6 times. It is absolutely phenomenal. What he's got is the use of these energies. He started out as a scientist who was going to become a nuclear engineer, graduated from college in England. He's Iranian, I do believe. Gets into the nuclear field and says, oh man, you know, it was so tightly regulated, there was no room for anything. So he ended up going, you know, to the space program and saying, oh, let me see what I could do for the space program. You know, they're at least interested in the new horizons, the new, you know, what's possible. So Pesh was interested in energy because we had to escape Earth's gravity field. He was interested in food because you can't take enough food. You can't send enough rockets along to accompany the team of people that are going to eat on a long distance travel. He was interested in medicine because you can't run back to the doctor if you're out by Mars, you know, floating around and you have an issue. And I forget what the other thing was, something else. So he is working with plasmas, and he has developed it's a game changer. All there is to it. It puts all of the solar and wind and all of that other stuff to shame. I mean, he is able to open up a plasma, an electron, borrow maybe 1 billion of the 10 billion years of energy contained in that, close it back up, use the energy for what he wants. That's one thing. Just with food, he's developed a carbon-based food that has all the nutrition in it that you will ever need. He has developed a medical procedure that is when you get tested to see what is your base energy signature. And when you get sick, they just, you know, put you in this field that matches your base energy, and you go back to being your perfected self. Energy medicine is the way of the future.
But is that accessible to people like us?
Not
That's
yet,
what I'm asking.
not yet, but it's coming.
Okay.
So, you know, keep the dream alive. Keep the effort alive. And, you know, be aware that the energy he's talking about is phenomenal. So, yeah.
Gloria?
Let's do her and then we'll come back to you if there's, I didn't look over here, sorry guys. Okay. Yeah, you're Gloria.
Quick question. As far as the charge density plasmas and applications to seeds, a question that I feel sure will come up at some point in future conversations is, what is the difference between that and GMO?
Oh, big difference.
Okay, but I mean, they will say, well, does that modify the genetic composition of plants? So I'd be curious how.
No, it modifies the energetic configuration of a seed, which is a living system. One of the things, this is a piece that Lefty figured out before I came along. He had, remember that thing I showed you that he had some seeds in? And he turned it up and said to Ed, put your hands on this. He was experimenting with that, and he was zapping seeds with these ion electron avalanches to see what would happen. And he discovered, after he zapped them and put them in the germination chamber, that nothing happened. So he was like, well, those seeds are no good. So he put them on, you know, somewhere else in the lab. And a couple months later, he was getting ready to clean. And he was going to throw those seeds away. The same little voice, don't throw those seeds away, said, you know, twice, don't throw those seeds away. So he puts the seeds in germination paper, you know, germinates them, and they grew like gangbusters. So he was like, oh, you know, I tested these right after we zapped them. What was the problem? So he eventually, long story short, figured out what has to happen. When you energize, when you hit a living system with a phenomenally powerful kind of energy, the little seed is a living system, okay? And it knows that it's been hit with something that could be very destructive. So it puts all of its time and all of its attention into producing a tremendous increase in antioxidant capacity within that seed system. It takes it roughly 4 to 6 weeks to do that. At the end of that 4 to 6 weeks, if you plant that seed, it overcomes every barrier in that field that you can think of. And he was realizing at that point there's an adjustment period. People have to be willing to go through an adjustment period, whether it's a seed or a person or a tree. Or the tree may lose all of its branches, and if people, cut it down too quick, they'll never, the tree won't be there to see the next year that it has twice as many blossoms and twice as many leaves. So an energy change is not a change in GMO. It's literally, GMO is when you add, DNA particles that are not natural for that system. What this energy does is turn on. All DNA works by energy frequency. It's like playing a piano. You play that tune, that piece of DNA comes on. You play that tune, that piece of DNA comes on. So when you hit it with this energy, that new sequence of capacities becomes functional. So,
Okay,
does that make
well,
sense?
we'll get to you. We got some questions
We
here.
have a couple over here that I promised. This gal right here.
I just wanted to say that Ed Edwards told me those stories
Oh,
about having worked with Dr. Levengood.
yeah.
But what was even more interesting is he worked for me in
Oh.
Clayton, Georgia.
Yeah.
Where I had a 50-foot concrete dome. And
Oh,
the
wow.
things that he did around my property were absolutely astonishing and amazing. But you said he was quite a character. And he certainly was. What I think, and this brings up a whole different separate issue for people like Ed, is that he was a stranger in his own land. He was unaccepted by the people that he had grown up with because he could do all these phenomenal things, but they felt it was
Right.
They were very uncomfortable around him.
That's true.
And even the people in my community, which was a fairly metaphysical one, were uncomfortable
Yep.
at a point where they really shouldn't have been.
I
And
know.
it was very, very awkward to watch because he was amazing with
Yeah.
so many areas.
He still is. He's really grown a lot through the last few years of experiences, and he's working with doctors now somewhere. I forget exactly where. But his ability to heal people is astounding.
Astounding.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah,
and
and-
he was also able to do other things. I saw him gently push over, root ball and everything, 90-foot trees.
Oh,
That-
yeah.
I mean, like, yes, he had a piece of equipment with him, but it was very small, and he would just kind of move it and move it and move it. And he did 14 of those in 2 days.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it was astonishing to watch.
Mm.
So, but the ability to focus on that and still live in the world that we live in was awkward.
I have a comment. I'm very, very involved with developing some of the communities of the future and sustainable living and et cetera, et cetera. And I think, my personal opinion, is that we need to be watching children and developing those children that don't exhibit any abilities to see what could be developed, and then making sure that those who do have abilities are really given the kinds of attention and education that will make that whole set of skills flower and blossom. So we have a ways to go. Yeah.
was listening to a chemtrail interview on the way over here, and I'm sensing what you're talking about is the solution, but how can it be applied on a big enough scale to counter the spraying program?
Oh, let me say something about Cash. It is the solution. One of the things that Cash has developed is the ability to just change the radioactive nature of anything. So he immediately got on the phone after Japan and the tsunami and said, "You want me to come and bring my equipment and fix it?" And they said, "Oh no, we got it under control." The United States made his work illegal or something for a while, but then last October, as soon as Obama was elected again, he got in touch and said, let's let's see what we can do with some of this. And it's all very, very quiet, but I'm on Kesh's mailing list, and so I kind of keep up with what's happening. Kesh was so upset at being kidnapped by Canada for 4 or 5 days a couple years ago, and they stole everything on every single hard drive, every single thumb drive, every paper. They copied everything on his computers. He went home and he put out a message to every country in the world and said, I have this amazing technology, come on over here and let me teach you how to use it. It's all free. It's all out there. There are countries that are showing up, and one of the things he can do is just eliminate pollution. Eliminate. I mean, it returns everything to its pristine state. You know, if they use that in this country, then how are they going to control us? You know? How are we going to feel guilty about this terrible warming that we're not doing? Go ahead.
Did Dr. Levengood ever reach any conclusions as to the purpose behind the cattle excisions?
Yeah, but he won't say publicly. You know, we did establish how they were getting all the blood out of the animal and the parts. I think I know why. It's not a good reason, you know. It's really awful.
Following up on that,
Yeah.
have you all looked at the book, The Watchers, that purports to answer that very question?
Oh, really? No.
I recommend it. It's in the INACS library.
Okay. The Watchers. Okay. A recommendation for reading. Yeah.
When you,
Oh.
when you were talking about water, what did you use to energize the water?
You mean, who did we use to energize the water?
When you were talking about, water and how, how it was set and then.
The pulsing.
Yeah, the pulsing and everything. What kind of energy did you put through the water to?
Nothing.
You said you treated the water.
You said you treated.
If we were going to treat water to then soak seeds in,
Right. Mm-hmm.
that was usually me or Jaya or, any one of the other healers that passed through the lab. And I had some water from John of God that I got probably at least 10 to 15 years ago, somewhere in there. It's still just as potent as, brand new water. And every week or so, I take out a quarter cup, drink it, put a new batch, fill the quart jar, put it back in the fridge. Energized water has a memory. Water has its own consciousness. So if you, for instance, one of the things in the lab that we did, Lefty had this tank, a sealed tank on the bench, and so we were putzing around in the lab, and I can't remember why we did this, but there was some reason. And so I said to him, well, let me see if I can communicate with that water. So I sit down so that the tank is like right in front of me, and I thought, I'll just use my eyes. There are 2 blue rays that come out of your eyes, one out of each eye. It's very similar, and those eyes, those rays are what light up the reality, the hologram. You're picking out what you want to see, and it appears because those rays come together. It's the same principle as holographic photography, okay? You take the photo of the object, but you can't see that object in another photograph until you illuminate that photograph from exactly the same angles that it was being taken under, that the photo was being taken under. So I knew, because I have been able to see, there's lots of things I see. And so I thought, okay, let's see if I can just talk to this water. So I sat down and I'm like, okay, if I just use my eyes, what am I going to do? So I started with, okay, let's just go around in a circle. So I moved my eyes around the tank, and sure enough, the signal on the chart recorder starts to change. And gets going pretty good, and then I reversed it, and the signal reversed. So then I said, okay, well, let's do back, I think it was up and down. Ta-da, ta-da, ta-da. And that was one signal. And then back and forth, up and down, back and forth this way, horizontally. Signal changed each time. The water was picking up the difference in the motion of my eyes. So then I thought, well, let's try an infinity symbol, you know? So I start and I go down and down and down, and I'm, you know, moving my eyes. And this frilly pattern, almost like a crocheted doily, came out on the chart recorder. And I'm doing that, and all of a sudden I'm thinking, oh, that's not the way it's supposed to be. When you do an infinity symbol with your eyes, when you trace it, it's supposed to go up and up and up. And I was going down and down and down. And so I reversed it, and the doily pattern reversed. And so then I said to Lefty, we stopped for a minute, and Levengood said, you know, oh my God, look what you did. And so I was like, well, let's try some other stuff. So I started scooping, you know, energy out of the air and just dumping it in without touching. You can't touch anything because motion will disturb it. So the energy went up, and we got all done, and Levengood says, or I said, do you think we had an effect? And he said, do I think? And I said, well, maybe it was just, you know, I'm starting to think like a scientist. You know, maybe it was just an anomaly. Maybe. So let me take the energy back out. So turn the chart recorder back on, and I start scooping the energy out, the intention being to remove that energy. And the energy just went right back down. And so we got all done, and what was amazing was how responsive water is to anybody. It doesn't matter who. It doesn't matter what your intentions are. It doesn't matter how experienced you are. Water, you are water. You should be, if you're healthy, 85% water. You know, aging is when you lose your water. You start to dry up like a prune, and you get real leathery. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I have a question. What kind
Yeah.
of detector are you using? Is it electromagnetic or photoelectric or something else?
Let me see if I can describe this, okay? All the energy is supplied by whatever the thing is. Okay, so we had a petri dish with water in it on the lab bench. And there was a piece of aluminum foil which acted as a charge collector plate on one side, which went up over the edge and down into the water. And then another piece on the other side. And that was oriented exactly east and west and north and south, because space is anisotropic. The position, the official position of science is that space is isotropic, which means that it's just this big sameness out there. That is not true, not even a little bit true. There are current and energy flows and rivers and streams and whirlpools and oceans of current moving everywhere in what looks like empty space. And so the energy, if you want to make a change in yourself, you face east and you set your intention and you do whatever you're going to do. West is pretty good. North and south are pretty darn stable. Not much happens. So we have this petri dish with these charge collector plates, and we got an alligator clip on each one. And the alligator clips go over to the chart recorder. That's it.
It's basically galvanometer then.
That's right. Yeah, nothing fancy. We used to laugh about the super duper collider kinds of things and the billions of dollars that were put into that. And here we are with our aluminum foil and our petri dish for $2.
Have you connected them to leaves, split leaf philodendron like that, like Cleve Baxter did?
Yep, all of that. Leaves, you name it. You know, vegetables, hair, blood, oh my God, semen, skin, old dead leaves, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Everything is alive. Everything. It's all waiting to communicate. Yeah.
Have you worked with Doppler scientists at all?
No, but I'm familiar with them. My girlfriend brings them to America each year to her place in Virginia. And so I met them, and they're pretty interesting. Yeah. Damanhur is an amazing place. Yeah.
Yeah, Chuck.
This is not a trick question.
Uh-huh. Go ahead.
From your perspective and what you know, can you define what consciousness is?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Talk to me.
Okay. Okay, let's talk about a theory of consciousness, okay? Which is something that I've developed so that we can talk about consciousness. If you don't have a common language, a scientist, in the world of science, everybody knows what certain words mean, okay? And so so we have this thing called mind, and we have this thing called space, okay? Edgar Casey said, mind is the builder, and that was my first, what? Etc. Long story short, and you can read about it in the book if you want to get volume 2. Mind is the awareness property of space. Space is the location aspect of mind. When you have a full-blown Kundalini experience and you go into that space called the void, and all that's there is this awareness called I am. That's your basic ground of being. There's no movement there, there's no sound there, there's no motion there, there's nothing there. There's this incredibly blissful I am consciousness, or I am awareness. It's consciousness moves, awareness does not move. Awareness just is. And when you go into that place of consciousness, of awareness, the I am awareness, you are in a state of orgasmic bliss in which you cannot move. You're just frozen in that bliss. It's not something you want to leave either. And you don't have any self. There's no history, there's no plants, there's no animals, there's no worlds, there's nothing there except this amazing, powerful I am. That's all that's there. And that, my friends, is the basis of everybody's existence. That is a billion little tiny particles, pinpoints of light, that all hold nothing except that consciousness, or that awareness, So, and right there, that's a perfect example of the problem that we have. Some people talk about consciousness, some people talk about mind, some people talk about awareness, some people talk about some other thing. We got to start somewhere. So mind is and this was dictated to me by this stuff itself, okay? Mind is the awareness property of space, and space is the location aspect of mind, and that's perfectly quiet and still. Now, if that stuff begins to move, what we have is an increase in energy. It changes state and is raised to a higher state. And mind transforms to become consciousness, and space becomes energy. Consciousness is the feeling aspect of energy. Energy is the motion of consciousness. It's two sides of one coin. Energy and consciousness are one unit with two aspects, and that's your first step into what I'm going to call the possibility of a world.
Would you say that again? Mind is the something of...
Mind is the awareness property of space, and space is the location aspect of mind.
No, the other one.
Consciousness is the feeling aspect of energy, and let me tell you, all energy feels. And energy is the motion of consciousness. The motion. So if you have a powerful consciousness, you're going to get more energy. You're going to have more energy. You're going to have a bigger energetic effect. Okay? And this is consistent with the science as well. So now the third stage of development is you've got this incredible ocean of seething energies, waves, etc. What happens is that because of the currents and eddies and the whirlpools and the moments where things come together, you get this intense pressure that builds up. And once that pressure builds up, what you get is the formation of a particle. And that particle is a change of state. The energy becomes a particle, and the consciousness becomes intelligence. It is the nature of intelligence to cooperate, and it is the nature of particles to communicate. So now we've got all the pieces in place where we can begin to assemble particles, and what happens as they begin to communicate is that they begin to say, hey, look, I can do this and I can do that. It's like little kids. Hey, watch this, Ma. Particles do almost the same thing with almost the same joy and abandon. And they come together and they create these assemblies. And those assemblies then come together to create a pattern. And once you get to a pattern, a working pattern, there's all kinds of form, human, animal. You know, the pattern can be a mosquito pattern, it can be a banana pattern, it can be a tree pattern, etc. And at that point, intelligence is transformed to thought, and the particles transform to become a pattern. Thought is the maintenance aspect of a pattern. It is a repetitive aspect. And the pattern is the demonstration of the sequence of thoughts needed to achieve a working model. So now we've gone all the way from source, which is your I am quiet space, through consciousness energy, change of state to particle and intelligence, change of state to thought and form, or to thought and pattern, and that becomes the basis for form. So what you have is a way of getting from, which is a big thing. This is a big issue in the world of science. It's called the arrow of time conundrum. And the arrow of time conundrum was posed by mathematician Paul Davies, who said, everybody talks about this thing called, eternity, etc., in this beautiful, wonderful place. How do we get from, this messy, noisy world that we've got here to that and back again? And as soon as I read that question, I thought, oh, I know what that is. That's exactly the transitions that you go through when you go back and forth in and out of a Kundalini experience. You dissolve to nothingness. And I've had numerous people tell me that they were just about to have a Kundalini experience, and they forced themselves out of it because they knew they were going to, quote, die. And I said, you should have died. You would have spontaneously reassembled. You lose your sense of self. It's all gone. There is no you when you have a Kundalini experience. So that's consciousness and energy. Does that make any sense to you?
Thank you very much. And it's an interesting thing that you said that when you're in the void, all there is I am.
That's right.
And that's precisely what God says He is.
That is true. The ancients used to refer to the I am, and we have some pretty serious distortions of that. Listen to the we just in the Ten Commandments, the first commandment. If you interpret the first commandment incorrectly, it says a whole different thing. The way that it's taught in most schools right now is, I am the Lord thy God, and thou shalt not have strange gods before me. Okay? The true first commandment is, the I am is the Lord your God, and you will put nothing as more important than that.
Wow.
There's a whole different, a whole different way.
I think you answered a lot of what.
Who's talking?
I'm talking over here.
Oh.
Over here.
Oh.
I
Okay.
was just going to ask you, and you answered a lot in the time
Okay.
in that last question, but I just wanted to ask you to what extent your and Levengood's understanding of CDP ties in or dovetails perhaps with Reich's understanding of orgone and maybe Steiner's understanding of biodynamics,
Yeah.
or if it does at all.
Good question, yeah. Reich, I think the only mistake that Reich made was that he called his energy organ. It was too close to the word orgasm. And we have an entire country full of Puritans that are still in full control. And they freaked out, you know? And he did not have very many people skills, you know, so that was too bad. And Steiner, we have a biodynamic farm, you know, and when I told people I was doing biodynamics, they're like, oh, you get into all that goofy stuff? Well, if you understand the physics behind biodynamics, you know, one of the things that you have to do if you're going to have a biodynamic farm is you make this barrel compost, and what you do is put some cow manure into a, you know, with some basalt and a few other goodies, into a pit in the ground, and you leave it there for an entire season. The earth energies change that, and it composts, and it becomes this amazing stuff. And then you have to take a quarter cup of that for each 3 gallons of water that you're going to, you know, use on your field or your garden. And you put that into a barrel. Say you get a 5-gallon bucket, and you put 3 gallons of water in it, and, you know, 3/4 cups of or 1/4 cup of barrel compost. And you stir in one direction, and then you stir in the other direction for 20 minutes. And then, according to Steiner, you take the water and you spray it on the field. You filter out the compost, the barrel compost, and you spray it on the field. Steiner never ever explained, or maybe he didn't know, that when you have a vortex rapidly rotating, the point at the bottom of that vortex has 10,000 volts accumulated in it. And when you break up the vortex by stirring in the other direction, that charge goes kaboom, and it hits everything in the bucket. And what it does is imprint the qualities and the characteristics and the properties of the manure or the barrel compost into the water. So now for, you know, a quarter cup of fertilizer and, you know, nutrient, you've got 3 gallons of stuff that you're going to spray, and it's a heck of a lot easier to spray a little bit of water than it is to be hauling tons of cow manure.
And
So.
on that note, we've run